أوها بديار ورمانة، أوها حلوة ملفانة، أوها حلفنا ما نطفها، أوها لعرس شفاء بالسلامة.
بنت العربان يا بوي لعليكم نار يا بوي.
This podcast episode was translated from Arabic to English and dubbed into English by the producers, dubbing artists.
إجازة أو عطلة أمومة هي الإجازة أو العطلة اللي يعطوها للمرأة الحامل.
Maternity leave refers to the paid time off work given to pregnant women due to the changes and pains they struggle with before and after giving birth. But do our communities really believe that only pregnant women suffer from these changes and pains?
مرحبا، أنا فرح.
Hello, I'm Farah, a journalist and filmmaker from Iraq. In this episode, I will take you, along with my colleague Osama, in a journey to shed light on different aspects related to toxic masculinity and its relation to religion in Arab communities. Now, let's start together.
يوم من الأيام مريت بموقف.
One of these days, I faced a certain situation. Well, actually, I faced this kind of situation many times, but this one in particular, I will never forget. At the beginning of my career as a journalist, I worked as an editor at a satellite TV channel. As per usual, I came to work, sat by my computer, then suddenly,
شعرت بألم شديد بحيث كلمة الآه بينت على لساني.
I felt severe pain that the sound of slipped through my lips and tears ran down my eyes. I knew at that moment that my period started. That pain was my period cramps. And at that moment, I really needed to return home to rest in my bedroom and have a hot drink. But how was I supposed to go to my boss and tell him that I needed time off? The situation that I found myself in, though, was that I saw some male colleagues whispering and smiling among each other. Then one of them came to me asking with a smirk, "Is something wrong, Farah?" I answered, "I have a stomach ache and I need to get off work now," saying that with tears in my eyes from the pain. But that colleague simply said, "Just eat a date and you'll be fine." And he continued to laugh and walked away.
ما تحملت الألم واستأذنت وقلت معدتي توجعني.
I couldn't bear the pain. I asked for time off, said that I had a stomach ache, got out of work and went home.
حسوا أنه عندي الدورة الشهرية ونظراتهم وضحكاتهم اللي كانت عبارة عن استهزاء وأني أبكي خلتني أشعر بالقهر وكأني ارتكبت جريمة لا تغتفر.
The next day, I went to work after taking painkillers and having rested a bit from menstruation pains. I saw that same colleague who said with the same smirk, "Looks like you're well rested and fine today."
أكيد أنا مو المرأة الوحيدة اللي تعاني من آلام الدورة الشهرية وما تقدر تتكلم.
Sure, I'm not the only woman suffering from period pains and cramps and who's unable to talk about it at work, to ask for a leave or time off to recover from the period pains. A lot of women in the Arab world and on this planet in general are suffering from the same thing. Dr. Yasmin Kollektiv, an obstetrician and gynecologist from Cairo, faced a different situation at work.
At the beginning of my career, I was a resident doctor at a governmental establishment. For a long time, we had to work long hours shifts that could reach up to 18 hours a day in order to cover for the lack of doctors at that time. All my life, I have had heavy flow, painful periods. One day at the hospital, while I had my period, received a childbirth case at dawn. Due to the intense pain I was having because of my period, I couldn't deal with the case, check her, or deliver the baby. So I asked the specialist doctor that was on my shift to take over. Of course, this was a situation that I'm used to. I didn't have any shame or embarrassment to talk about it. It was actually pretty spontaneous for me to say that I had a lot of pain because of my period and that I wouldn't be able to deal with the case. Honestly, at the time, the doctor didn't show any reaction. He just took what I asked of him without saying anything in return. But then I was surprised the following day to our consultant doctor who told me that I shouldn't be talking about my period, that it wasn't acceptable to say that I was tired because of my period and couldn't do my job or help the specialist, that it was a very unsuitable thing to say at work. Honestly, that came as a shock to me. I had imagined that considering the nature of our work as obstetric and gynecology doctors, our contact and scientific knowledge of the matter, that we would have a better background. After this encounter, I haven't mentioned my period. I started to come up with other excuses to avoid saying that I'm tired because of my period.
This is a situation where Dr. Yasmin had actually resorted to injections to soothe her period pains during work.
I take 2 injections a day to be able to stand on my feet and move to do my usual work. The things that are related to us being women in our communities are ruled by customs and traditions and non-religious dogmatism, as I believe that this is not a part of religion at all. It's like they make you feel like everything related to you is a taboo that you shouldn't talk about. We put baths in black bags. We send kids to buy them for us because we can't, as grown women, go to the pharmacy ourselves and ask for sanitary pads, or just hold them normally and walk in the street as if it is something normal for us? No, we cannot do that because it's not normal for the people in our community.
المجتمع العربي يتعامل مع الدورة الشهرية على
The Arab community considers the menstruation period as a stigma for women. Therefore, women won't be able to talk about period pains at work. Consequently, they will have to ignore their periods, acting as if it's something that doesn't exist, because in any case, there won't be a response towards women's need of having a menstrual leave. The question here is there a religious text that forbids women to talk about menstruation periods, especially in places of work, to ask for a menstrual leave or time off? Or is it just social customs and traditions and myths that some people link to religion? Dr. Zuhra Thabit from the Faculty of Literature and Human Sciences in Qayrawan, Tunis, specialized in Arabic language and civilization and comparative religion, is joining us to answer that question.
We will find in the Quran a mention of menstruation, mahid, which is the period. Quran was very clear and direct about it, as well as smooth and flexible in dealing with women. When you look at the verse 222 from the Surah Al-Baqarah, the cow, it says, "And they ask you about menstruation. Say it is harm. So keep away from wives during menstruation, and do not approach them until they are pure. And when they have purified themselves, then come to them from where Allah has ordained for you. Indeed, Allah loves those who are constantly repentant and loves those who purify themselves." And not approaching women here means not having sexual relations with them. It doesn't mean mistreating women or considering them impure.
توضح دكتورة زهرة أنه الوصم في
Dr. Zuhra explains that the stigma against women because of menstruation is based on myths and traditions due to friction with other religions and ideas that consider women impure creatures during menstruation, making anyone interacting with them or touching them impure as well.
Therefore, denying women's right to menstrual leave and considering her an impure creature is similarly found with Muslim fanatics, as well as Jewish and Christian fanatics, the same way women were considered evil creatures and a home for witchcraft and evil souls for old myths.
بعض الدول أقرت قوانين
Some countries have passed laws that stipulate the right of working women to take paid leave or time off during menstruation. In the Arab world, Morocco submitted a bill for that proposal. It is a human right and it should be a stated law in our Arab world and all over the world as well, considering the high psychological, mental, and physical impact it entails.
مرحبا بكم أنا أسامة عادل من اليمن.
Welcome everyone, I'm Osama Adel from Yemen. In this episode, I will talk about the concepts of women's guardianship. It is common to understand of guardianship that women need a man of her relatives to be able to get married, travel, or to do any other civil transactions, indicating that she, by herself, cannot do any of that. But is this really the definition of agency in Islam? Or is it that some social concepts have been exploited in their historical context to reinforce masculine authority of men over women? We will try to answer these questions with the Tunisian researcher and thinker Ulfa Youssef.
ليس هناك شيء اسمه ولاية على المرأة لأن المرأة شأنها في ذلك شأن الرجل.
There isn't such a thing called guardianship because women are created by Allah, same as He created men to worship Him. He gave both of them responsibilities and entrusted both of them with these responsibilities. Therefore, a person cannot be responsible for someone else or has agency over him or her. Eventually, no soul burdened with sin will bear the burden of another, and each person is responsible for their own actions in front of God.
صورة المرأة في الجاهلية وفي صدر الإسلام وفي القرون الوسطى.
If we talk about women's status pre-Islam and in early Islam, as well as in the Middle Ages in general, because here we must not be unfair to Islam. In all the countries in the Middle Ages, a woman was considered an object, not a human being. Therefore, she could not be considered an independent person taking her own decisions, like deciding to get married or move or travel, because in the first place, she was not an independent person. This wasn't specific to Muslim countries. It doesn't even exist in Quran. This phenomenon was related to a certain period of history. Nonetheless, some women, and here this is a very important point, some women during that historical period enjoyed agency, and those are noble women, women with money and high social status. For example, Khadija bint Khuwaylid, the first wife of Prophet Muhammad, may Allah be pleased with her, was a woman with agency. She didn't need anyone to take agency over her. So all of this that we're talking about now was a social system, historical social institutions firmly rooted in human history, but has nothing to do with Islam as a religion.
Dr. Ulfa Yusuf had a personal experience regarding this matter. She married off her daughters by a female judge and two female witnesses. This marriage contract has caused a huge fuss in Tunisia and the Arab world. Let's hear why from the doctor herself.
واجهت ضجة كبيرة لأننا غير متعودين. في نهاية الأمر الزواج له شروط واضحة.
The reason of all the fuss that happened is because we're not used to it. We're used to men being judges and witnesses because for a long time they took the guardianship for women. But marriage has clear conditions. These are offer and acceptance and the presence of two witnesses at least. Then in the second phase, publicizing. But nowadays, publicizing is not essential because there's a written contract. In the early times, there was not a written contract. It was all oral. That's why publicizing was required. Nowadays, a contract is written and the state itself is witnessing this marriage. This is what people miss to understand now. That when the contract is signed and stamped, then the state itself, no matter what kind of state it is witnessing that the relationship between these two people is matrimonial. Regarding my experience that you mentioned, my daughter and her husband wanted to honor women being mothers. Her husband said that the closest person to him was his mother. Same for my daughter, who also said that the closest person to her was her mother. Of course, this does not mean that they don't love their fathers. It's just a question of closeness. I don't know why we forget that paradise is under the feet of mothers, and your mother, then your mother, then your mother in these situations. But we bring it up in other situations. So they just wanted to honor mothers. As for the civil status judge, she was eventually representing the state, so in this case her sex does not matter. Whether it was a man or a woman, the value in this marriage contract is in the official character that the state has assigned to it, making this marriage both legitimate and legal at the same time.
The concept of men's guardianship over women is controversial. While some see it as a pure economic responsibility, others see it as an entitlement for leverage and preference.
الرجال قوامون على النساء بما فضل الله بعضهم على بعض وبما أنفقوا من أموالهم. صدق الله العظيم. إذن
What does the Quran say in clear verse? By what Allah has given one over the other and what they spend from their wealth. So guardianship is connected with specific conditions. First, some of them excel the others. He did not say that Allah has made them excel over women. What Allah has made some of them excel the others, meaning some humans over other humans. And we find this in other locations in the Quran. For example, in the verse, of all of Allah's servants, only the knowledgeable of His might are truly in awe of Him. The knowledgeable are the closest to Allah, and those whom Allah gives light and wide vision are those who are closest to Him, and so on. Thus, first of all, here Allah did not choose a preference in guardianship. He did not say men are better than women. The second condition of the wealth they have spent. This verse was revealed in a period when women, or most women, weren't working. They did not have an income. So this verse is actually in favor of women, ordering men to spend of their wealth to support women. And we can find many other verses ordering men to spend of their wealth to provide for feeding or nursing children and supporting them, and so on. I always say that we have drifted a lot from Islamic values. The essential values that marital life, trade and business transactions, general relations among people, and even the relationship between a human being and Allah Almighty are all based on. So every interaction in all life aspects. And now we're stuck in the conflict of who's better, men or women. There isn't a person who is better than another person. There are cases when a wife is wiser, other cases when a husband is, and other cases when they both agree or disagree on a position. And we have cases where the man is making the decision, and others where the woman is the one to take the decision. But eventually, what are we seeking really? There is not an absolute truth. We seek to establish a kind of understanding in this family that is achieved through some compromises and converging of views. Because eventually, we will always have differences and various opinions. And we need to create relativeness instead of focusing on these imaginary conflicts between femininity and masculinity. As love and compassion in marital life, in interactions between men and women, and between feminine and masculine is essential. And it emphasizes what Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, has said, I was merely sent to fulfill perfect morals.
شكرا لاستماعكم لبودكاست أصواتنا. كنا معكم.
Thank you for listening to this episode of podcast Aswatona. We were with you, Farah Adnan, and I, Osama Adel. Stay tuned for the upcoming episodes. Best wishes.